Struggling to get influencer marketing working for your business? Businesses today face the complex challenge of effectively aligning their brands with influencers to truly connect with their audiences. And despite rising investments in influencer marketing, many companies struggle to ensure their collaborations are strategically sound and they're resonating authentically with their target demographics. Misalignment can lead to inauthentic content, wasted resources, and failed campaigns. Imagine launching a campaign that falls flat because the influencer's message doesn't resonate, or worse, is perceived as disingenuous. This not only damages the campaign, but can also tarnish the brand's reputation. How do we find and select influencers and get them aligned with our marketing strategies? That's what we're covering in today's episode of The Martech Show.
The past is gone. Now is the future.
This is The Martech Show, exploring today's marketing technology solutions. Social media, artificial intelligence, augmented reality.
Now is the future.
Content, SEO, email, analytics, listening, advertising, and more. I'm your host, Mike Alton, and I'm joined by agency owner and technology futurist Robin Diamond. Each episode explores the latest developments in marketing technology and shares new solutions and innovative approaches that you need to know about to grow your business today. And now, the rest of today's episode. Welcome back to the Martech Show, where Robin and I get to dish on what's shiny and new in the Martech space, then do a deep dive into a specific platform or solution that can help you in your business today. Hey, Robin, how are you doing?
Feeling really great today.
So glad to be here. So great to see you. We're on this new bi-weekly schedule with the Martech Show, and that's one thing I kind of miss is seeing your face every single week. So we got to fix that. But a fascinating report dropped this week from Forrester called The State of Generative AI Inside U.S. Agencies 2024. That's a bit of a mouthful, but more than 3/4 of respondents said that generative AI is a disruption for their agency. 29% of respondents said it's a major disruption that'll change their business forever. Respondents identified 4 key areas of an agency's ecosystem where generative AI will have significant or very significant impact. How an agency creates content at 76%, the agency marketplace at 71%, how consumers interact with the work created by an agency at 69%, and what content an agency produces for clients at 62%. Remarkably, 91% of U.S. advertising agencies are either currently using AI, that was 61%, or they're exploring use cases at 30% for that tech, outpacing other groups, including marketing organizations and the general business population. What's your take, Robin? Is that in line with what you've seen in the industry or even within your own agency?
100%. It is, and we keep talking about this, and more things are coming out, and, some people are scared of it. Yes, and some AI is scary, but if you're not embracing it, there's not even enough hours in the day. And so we are seeing that merge of people embracing it, bringing it in, and leveraging it across everything. Plus, how can you keep up now with how much content is going out there? And so this is a really great way to help your teams become stronger.
Could not agree more. And I definitely concur that it's something we've talked about a lot, and we're going to continue to talk about it on this show for sure. And for more on how marketing agencies can and should invest in AI, sign up for our 4th annual agency summit taking place on July 18th, where you'll find a panel devoted to AI's impact on agencies, as well as sessions from Adobe, Google, LinkedIn, TikTok, Teamwork, and more. I'll put a link in the chat and the show notes. Now, while AI influencers continue to rise in interest and usage, most brands and agencies are still turning to flesh and blood influencers to engage their audiences and build relevant connections, which means most brands, they still struggle with the challenges of finding, vetting, building relationships with, and managing human influencers who are creative and a little independent. How do we even get started with such a complicated and nuanced discipline? That's exactly what Ashley Zeckman is going to talk to us about. Ashley is a dynamic marketing leader and the co-CEO at Onalytica, a company renowned for its expertise in influencer marketing and audience intelligence. With years of experience in guiding brands through the complexity of influencer collaborations, Ashley's played a crucial role in developing strategies that align brand goals with audience expectations. Her work focuses on creating authentic, engaging, and effective marketing campaigns. Ashley is also an influential voice in the marketing community, regularly sharing her insights through articles and presentations, some of which I've had the extreme pleasure of seeing live. So, folks, I know we're in for a real treat today. Hey, Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, and you are too kind. I'm like grinning ear to ear about all the nice things you just said about me.
Oh, well, they're totally well deserved. Could you start just telling us more about Analytica and your role there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Onalytica has been around since before I think we even had the term B2B influencer marketing. And someone, it was an organization that I'd run into in my experience working agency side as well. And I'd say that we are very unique in the marketplace and that we're a combination of consultancy. So we have supporting B2B influencer marketing services, and we also have a platform, right? So we're that combo of SaaS and consultancy that most agencies or platforms can't really offer. And again, what we're really focused on is helping people discover, manage, and measure influencer relationships, influencer programs. My role as the co-CEO is fairly new. And it's, a combination of things like strategic direction, vision, steering the organization as a whole. But as you know, Mike, I'm a practitioner through and through. So I really enjoy, working on a smaller, more agile team. I'm still able to dig into those marketing strategies and things that really motivate me. But I'd have to say that honestly, my favorite part is really finding ways to highlight the work that our team does. I'm surrounded by incredibly talented, experienced people, and I get to learn from them every day. And I love that.
Congratulations on the new role, by the way. That's probably what, 8 months?
Yep. About that. So still kind of working through it.
Ashley, can you tell us why strategic alignment between brands, influencers is so important for marketing success?
I'm probably going to sound like a broken record here because I've been saying this for probably the last 4 or 5 years, but it really comes down to building trust and authenticity, right? We know that people do not trust marketers. They do not trust brands. They trust experts within their industry, right? So part of what we really need to look at is finding influencers that align with the same core values, the same messaging, the same topics, which, believe it or not, a lot of brands will go out to influencers who have never spoken on the topic of, let's say, AI, and try to collaborate with them on something like that. So it's important to understand who their audience is, what type of content they produce, in order to create that more genuine, engaging, impactful program.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it's one of those things where it almost sounds obvious if we've been doing this for a while. Like why would you approach an influencer to talk about AI if they've never talked about AI before? But there might be other things that are going through people's minds when they're going through this, particularly if it's an agency or a business or maybe a social media influencer manager who's not used to working with influencers and they've been perhaps thrown into that role. So what might be some common pitfalls that you've seen that they could avoid when working with influencers?
I think there's 2 main ones that come to mind for me. So the first is treating influencer relationships as transactional. And a lot of times when we first begin speaking with prospects or brands just exploring this for the first time, it's almost like they think influencer marketing is affiliate marketing. You create a piece of content, you give someone a tracked link, and they promote it, and then you pay them based on that sort of performance. But that's really not what successful influencer marketing looks like. So again, it's a combination of being too transactional, not building for the long term. So viewing these as, again, just kind of short-term gains instead of long-term relationships. So again, like I was talking about a little bit earlier in terms of, aligning with the influencers, that means that you should understand their audience, what their audience cares about, and the values alignment, right? And then I'd say another pitfall is not aligning your tactics for your influencers to the program with your objectives. So a program designed to drive awareness looks much, much different than one that's lead gen focused. So everything, again, from the types of content you're creating, the influencers you choose, the way that you're measuring it it really varies based on what you actually want to achieve.
That makes a lot of sense.
You're so transparent and you're so authentic, and everyone can hear it in your voice. I think that's why Mike and I love you, and it's amazing. When you're looking at 2024, and we've been doing this forever, 2024, B2B influencer marketing report, what are the top trends and strategies that brands need to align on? Because you are talking about that authenticity. What do they need to align on?
So the things that we've already talked about, right, in terms of authenticity, long-term relationships. But I think the channels and the types of content that we found, and again, what's really unique about this report, I feel, that kind of differentiates it from others in the industry, is that we didn't just survey the brands, we surveyed the influencers as well, right? And so we were able to overlay that data and compare and contrast a few things. So the channels, types of content is really interesting. Also, I'd say that brands are more interested in, what do we want to call them? More like remote collaborations like this, versus influencers are more interested in speaking opportunities, events, workshops, things like that. And I would venture to say that's probably likely due to the fact that they can garner higher fees for those types of engagements. But at the end of the day, there was very, very close alignment on which channels they're focusing on. The one that was interesting to me, though, that didn't quite fit in the mix was Threads. So influencers are much more interested in building their network there, and brands aren't quite ready to explore it yet. But LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, even TikTok are all emerging as B2B strategies. And then, of course, AI, right? You can't have any sort of research these days without thinking about how AI is going to impact the industry and the future of what we do. And I know that was something you mentioned at the beginning, Mike, was AI influencers, right? So we're actually hosting a webinar with our friend Chris Penn and Theo Lau on AI and ethics and influencer marketing in a few weeks, just to kind of dig a bit deeper into how it will impact our future.
Because there's no question that it will. It's just a question of how. And that's awesome that you're doing this webinar with Chris. We'll dig up the link to that and we'll include that in the show notes as well. But you mentioned like TikTok and other kinds of platforms, derivative content, generative content. There's all these different questions that I think brands have. How do they determine which platforms, which content types maybe are most effective for their influencer collaborations?
That's a really, really good question. I think one of my favorite takeaways from the report was something that Danielle Guzman of Marsh McLennan said, which is that you need to meet your audience where they are, right? So it's going to look a bit different for every brand. As we're looking in B2B tech specifically, LinkedIn is obviously the standout channel that's most important to people right now, as well as creating content on their website, right? Because lead gen, as marketers, we know is become more important than ever. When it was typically just a demand gen person's role to generate leads, now it's something we're all responsible for. But overall, I think it's just understanding where your audience spends the most time and what type of content they want. This isn't about what you want to create. It's about what they want to learn. So being able to predict that by doing voice of customer research or just analyzing demographics, behavior, things like that will really help kind of surface which channels and platforms are going to perform best. And testing, right? There always has to be, in my opinion, there always has to be room to test, to try new things, to see what works, to see what doesn't, and to see what your audience responds best to.
This isn't about what you want to create. It's about what your audience wants to learn. Love that, Ashley. Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Ashley Zeckman about influencer marketing and how to ensure effective collaborations. So we've got a bunch more questions for her. But first, let me share with you a tool that I think you're going to want to have in your toolbox to help measure the success of these collaborations.
I actually can't say enough great things about the reporting with Agora Pulse. I feel like that is my job security every month. My clients aren't that active on social media, which is why they have me manage their profiles for them. And when they get that report, it verifies that they're making a good investment.
The metrics downloads are so simple and easy to read, and it really helps me show where we are doing things right on social and where we need to improve.
So I think one of the main reasons why we decided to move to Agora Pulse is because it's a more comprehensive, integrated tool for all of our marketing needs. So rather than what we have had to do historically with Sprout, which is use certain parts of that platform that work really well and then supplement it with other outside tools, by moving to Agora Pulse, we were able to keep all of that into one technology platform, which is not only a time saver, but it also makes sure that our analytics and all of our reporting's on point because we're pulling all from the same source.
It's a really great platform for agencies. It makes it really easy to manage, but gives me really, really, really robust information that actually helps me develop better strategies for my clients and better plans of action.
Actually, that was such a terrific report. I put a link to it in the chat, and folks, you'll be able to get to it in the show notes. But could you share some of the insights on the financial aspects of working with influencers, how brands can maximize their ROI? People love talking about that. Tell us how.
It's still, again, we've been doing this for a long time, but it still can feel a bit like the Wild West out there, right? So there's no regulation necessarily on what influencers can charge for different things. So, and it could be even with one individual influencer, they might charge company A one amount, company B another amount. And we see this across a lot of the influencers that we work with, which is why we did, as part of the report, ask a question about the influencers' compensation expectations. So there are obviously certain collaborations that are going to cost more, and they tend to be more of those in-person events, event coverage, webinars, workshops, even LinkedIn Live sometimes. But the other interesting thing is that it varied a lot based on tier of influencers. So you would expect that, let's call them tier 1 influencers, the most well-known people in the industry, would be charging the most for things. But it's actually those tier 2 influencers that are charging more. So again, that was one of the things that was really interesting to me because it didn't necessarily match my hypothesis on who I thought would charge the most for what sort of things. But ultimately, in order to kind of manage costs a little bit better and determine ROI, it's really important to identify again and test, right? Have some small investments at first, test with influencers, see if they're generating the results. And of course, in order to do that, you need to set up proper goals, tracking, UTM codes, things like that, that can really attribute ROI to influencer marketing. And then another tip, I guess, is as we're looking at more long-term relationships, figure out what things you can bundle together when you're working with influencers. So instead of having an influencer, just do a webinar, just attend an event, just do a podcast episode, figure out if there's a long-term agreement that feels mutually beneficial, where everyone's bringing a little bit of something to the table. And the influencers are much more likely to negotiate with you if they feel like there's some longevity in the relationship for them.
Just a quick follow-up question, because you mentioned something that I also found very shocking, that you said those tier 1 influencers tended to charge less than the ones below. I would typically, I think, refer to them as a mega influencer versus a macro influencer. So was your report identifying different verticals or industries? And if so, was that the same across those industries?
In terms of what the influencers were charging for what they're doing?
Right.
So the influencer survey, we asked how long they'd been doing influencer work, approximately what their audience size was, and then what topics they were focused on. So we didn't necessarily go into because a lot of influencers work across multiple industries, right? Yeah. Especially those in tech. But it was really interesting to kind of use that data to segment, to hypothesize and then segment and see what the results were. And I'd say it was the tier 2 and the tier 3 who were both charging a bit more. And they tended to be the people with less years of experience, with obviously smaller networks too. So that part was really interesting, and something as a follow-up that I'm digging into with some of the individual people that contributed, just to get a better understanding of why they're charging what they're charging. What maybe there's someone who drives really good outcomes, so they can charge. Maybe it is more niche influencers that are very focused on a specific topic that can generate better ROI sometimes. So it gave me kind of a next step of data to explore and figure out.
Yeah, because it definitely hadn't been my experience working with marketing, B2B marketing influencers at Agora Pulse. If I want to work with Gary Vaynerchuk or Seth Godin, that would probably be at that tier 1 level, they're definitely way more expensive than any of the tier 2 or tier 3 influencers that I've tried to work with. But then again, that's a very nuanced and very specific approach. Robin, did you have a question?
I just find it interesting. And I actually disagree, Mike, because there is a whole podcast about mega people too scared to ask. And so they actually do it cheaper. So I'm like, now Ashley, like, I think we're all waiting for this information to come out. This is like a follow-up we need to do with Ashley. I love it. You talked about tracking, and that is what everyone struggles with. And so what are key metrics that brands should track with to ensure like their marketing efforts are aligned and effective with these?
I think I'll say the same thing I said earlier, and that it depends on what you want to achieve. A lot of times brands come to us and say, I need awareness, but I also need to generate leads. And unfortunately, like I mentioned, the type of program that you develop, the KPIs that you track, the things that you execute differ between those two things. So if you're looking at awareness, it could be engagement rates, likes, shares, comments, clicks, kind of a lot of those vanity metrics that you look at online, mentions, things like that, right? To figure out if your content is resonating with the audience, if you're reaching more people, right? So what are the impressions that you're getting by partnering with influencers? Let's say it's someone with 400,000 followers. What percentage of their audience attention are you capturing that is net new for your brand? And then as we look at conversion metrics for more demand gen or lead gen programs, we're going to be looking as bottom of the funnel as actual conversions, right? So it can be, are we driving people to the website? Are they converting? Are they marketing qualified? Are they sales qualified? And if you would have asked me even 4-5 years ago, if I thought it was possible to generate with leads with influencer marketing, I probably would have said no, because I don't think we figured out how to do it right. And we didn't know the right types of influencers to partner with to drive leads, right? So it's been really interesting the last couple of years to see how much more success we're having in developing these different types of programs that can achieve things throughout the marketing funnel.
That makes sense. And one of the things you talked about there was resonating with the audience. We've used that word. We use being authentic a couple of times. How can brands ensure that their influencer collaborations, they stay authentic, they actually do resonate with their target audiences?
You are not hiring influencers to be a mouthpiece for your organization. You are working with them because they are experts in their field and they have the attention of the audience you're trying to reach. The brands that edit and over edit and re-edit the content with the influencers, it makes it so much less authentic, and it doesn't make for a good long-term relationship. We have influencers that get really frustrated because they have something valuable to say, but it may not be promoting this product in the right way or using this exact right type of verbiage that a lot of times is an acronym that only exists within that organization, right? That most people don't know about. And so it can be really tough to consult with certain brands, especially bigger ones in highly regulated industries, about why it's important to let the influencer use their words. It's going to be more passionate. Their audience is going to like it more. And trying to control the content that they're creating doesn't end up usually generating the results you want anyways.
I could not agree more. Let creatives be creative, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
We have a
louder
quick
for
question
people in the
from
back of the room. That's good. Louder for those people, because that's so true. And just to hone in on that again. And I think Mike said it, let the creatives be creative. If you're going to control everything, then you're a terrible brand anyways. And we have to just say that, because that is where the influencers are coming. They know what works with their audience. They're talking to them. And so I love that you said that, Ashley. Mike, I know you had some questions that came in from the audience.
Yeah, let's pull in Autumn's question. I don't know if you have met Autumn. She's amazing. She says, would you say the strategies applied to B2B influencer marketing are similar for B2C influencer marketing, or is it an entirely different approach?
Especially with the rise of TikTok, I feel like B2C has started to move closer to what B2B does versus the other way around, right? So before it was, here's a Kardashian, here are these sneakers, here's the ad for you to write, so be it, right? Versus in B2B marketing, B2B influencer marketing, we're focused on finding people who are experts in the industry. So there is sometimes product trade, right? That's not typically part of how the compensation works, but that's getting influencers into the product, testing the product, giving feedback, promoting it, being people who might actually be users of this and promoting it to their audience versus, Kardashians aren't experts in sneakers necessarily, right? So I'd say that's the key difference is working with people who are actual experts. But again, it is interesting seeing the shift B2C is making, where it is a bit more consultative. They are trying to find people who, have certain expertise versus just someone with a large following who's famous for being famous.
Yeah, the expertise is they're a consumer of the things that they're trying to talk to other consumers about being consumers of. They don't necessarily have to have product knowledge. Yeah, that makes sense. Robin?
Yeah, and with that, like feeding off of that, could you provide some like examples of successful B2B influencer marketing campaigns and maybe the strategic alignments that were made to make it work?
This is like pulling from 10 years of my memory bank of doing B2B influence marketing. I say one of the programs I'm most proud of to this day, even though I haven't had a hand in running it for a few years, was the LinkedIn marketing and LinkedIn sales influencer program that we started probably in, I want to say like 2016, maybe. And what was really unique about that program is that they did it the right way. LinkedIn, because they're LinkedIn, could have just gone out and asked anyone for anything. And most people would have done it because that's brand association that they want. However, we really focused on building relationships with the right people, nurturing those relationships, having briefings with them to understand what they cared about, inviting them to exclusive events that were just for them, where, yes, they co-created content with a brand, but they also got new sizzle reels for speaking. They got access to things that no one else had access to. And the fact that that was always on and wasn't just a pilot or a campaign. And I think that's where I struggle with a lot of brands, especially those just beginning, is that it is so campaign focused when it really should be something there's always something, even if it's behind the scenes happening. So that's one that I'm incredibly proud of. We also have another client who works for, let's call him a challenger brand, who very recently, I'd say within the last year, came to us, wanted to run a pilot, had never executed influencer marketing before, but they did it the right way. They built long-term relationships. They honed in on their topics. They didn't try and do everything. They really focused. And I think it was in only a few short months, they increased their engagement by 9,000%. 9,000. They had an engagement rate of it was like 4.9% on LinkedIn, which I think typical is about 2%. And they had an incredibly low cost per conversion, cost per click. So we actually worked with them on figuring out the ROI. So you paid this much to work with this influencer. This is what you got. How does that compare to your other paid or organic tactics? And in the end, the best part about it is that they generated hundreds and hundreds of thousands of new pipeline with what I would consider to be a very modest budget. And again, this is a challenger brand. This is not the, Dells, the SAPs, the Googles, all of whom we also work with. It is not those household names, right? So what they were able to achieve in partnership with our team was amazing.
Those are stunning stories. And I love the advice that you kind of laced into some of those stories about approaching the program and the campaign and the influencers correctly, building long-term relationships. That is advice that I give over and over and over again. And Ashley, I've just got one more question. If you could share any other advice to the brands who are watching or might be listening to the podcast later on when it comes to setting up those influencer programs and achieving more alignment, whether it's with the influencers themselves or internally as a brand.
So I'd say piloting is very popular right now, especially with a tactic like B2B influencer marketing, right? There aren't necessarily dedicated teams. It's sometimes the ROI is not proven within an organization. So even if you're going to be pilot focused versus going all in, I'd say you can start short term, but think long term from the very beginning, right? So testing is great, piloting is great, but you also don't want to go too small, right? So working with just one influencer to do one thing, there are a variety of different factors that could impact it that might not make for the best experience. So then you might say, well, this isn't for us, right? This doesn't work for our brand, for our industry, whatever. When in actuality, you need to look at how you can integrate influencers into the marketing plans that you've already created, right? So let's say you're doing a white paper or an ebook. Can you include a foreword from a well-known influencer? Can you include quotes throughout as supporting content as a way to begin engaging people? So I think it's that, and then getting certain things into market fast. A lot of times, again, if we're campaign focused, we might be 3-4 months in before anything even goes live. And then by that time, you aren't quite sure, right? So I'd say execute some small things to begin with leading up to a larger piece of content, a larger event, whatever that might be, so that you're able to incrementally show ROI and make that business case. So when it comes time to have conversation with your stakeholders, you have a good idea of what might work. You have some results to show that aren't just focused on one thing. And you have a good idea of which influencers might be a better fit for you long-term.
Love the idea of incorporating influencers into the projects, campaigns, and content that you're already focused on working and creating. That is a terrific, terrific approach, Ashley. Thank you for sharing that. You've been amazing. This has been such an incredible interview. Thank you so much. For folks who want to learn more about you or Onalytica, where can they go to find you?
They can find us at onalytica.com. Also, feel free. I'm always looking for new LinkedIn buddies. So feel free to connect with me personally on LinkedIn. I love having conversations like this with smart people like you. And I'm always open to talk about this, right? I can't tell you how many times I've had people reach out and ask if we can have a 30-minute conversation about this, about what they might do. And I'm always open to that. So look me up and let's start chatting.
Terrific. That's all we've got for today, folks. Don't forget to join the Social Pulse community on Facebook, where we're having these kinds of conversations all the time. Any final thoughts, Robin?
I think it's just the quote from Ashley that I might put on my wall. Start short term with a long term in mind. I love that, Ashley. I think that should be all of our sayings from now on. Love it. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Until next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of The MarTech Show, hosted by Robin Diamond and Mike Alton, powered by AgoraPulse, the #1 rated social media management solution, which you can learn more about at agorapulse.com. If you want to make sure you're part of our audience during live weekly broadcasts, take a look at our calendar at agorapulse.com/calendar, or click the subscribe button in your email once you register for any of these events. Is there a particular tool or topic you'd like to see us talk about? Or perhaps you think your solution should be featured? Email me at mike@agorapulse.com.